What's up, it's your boy Tommaso.
And Alessandro.
And today we're showing you our very first of hopefully many to come sample breakdowns. This particular one is called Murder Was the Case, and it's from our recently released Westside Story sample pack, and as the title suggests, it's a West Coast hip-hop inspired pack. It's a mix of contemporary stuff as well as like 90s and 2000s West Coast stuff. A bit gangster, a bit funky, and everything in between.
Exactly.
I guess let's get straight to it. We're gonna play the full thing first, and then we're gonna get into the individual stems and which sounds we used and etc. Let's go. That doesn't make you want to rob somebody.
What started this sample was the bass line, and we got this trillion patch, acoustic, trillion weathered. It's playing a pretty simple bass line, I guess. It's just these three notes, they loop over, and at the end we have a little variation. And because we have the E and not the F, we are actually not in D sharp minor. I'd say we are in D sharp Phrygian.
As you can see here, we got the bass line playing. And there's actually a layer of the bass line. It's the same patch. But what we added here is a sound shifter, which is basically just a, pitching tool. And we took the original bass line down one octave and added an R bass. Instead of adding 100 elements with these types of samples, you want to keep it simple and make sure that the elements that are there fill out the space. And that's, one way to achieve that with the bass line.
I've seen a beatmaking video it must have been like 15 years ago of a guy, and he sampled a record from an actual record, and what he did because he didn't play the bass line, what he did to accentuate the bass was just filter out all the stuff in the sample and then pitch what's left down. And that was inspired by that. I thought like an old school hip hop producer, if you've made this beat in the 90s or something.
That's how you would have done it.
That's how you would have done it.
Yeah.
So that was the idea with, duplicating the upright bass instead of adding like an actual synth bass that plays that low part right there.
That piano chord, that's actually already an audio file.
Yeah, because it's a real piano.
It's a real piano that we recorded. There's a bit of stuff going on here. A dirty filter that's cutting some of the highs. An actual piano most of the time doesn't have those highs up in here anyways. Pro Q is, just accentuating that a bit more. Arvox, a little bit of compression. Nothing too crazy.
Arvox is actually supposed to be a vocal compressor, but I throw it on everything. It's really it's a very simple, just throw it on there, just move one fader type of deal.
The ref plate, we got Valhalla Vintage Verb, just a little bit more reverb.
Valhalla adds those big spaces.
And then a little bit of RC20. Nothing too crazy. A little bit of wobble, a little bit of noise. Distortion is at 29%. We use the tube distortion.
Exactly. So let's just play the dry thing and compare it with the full FX chain.
That's just with nothing going on. Just a dry recording. A little bit of filtering, a little bit of EQ. The compressor should bring it up a bit to the front. Makes it a little bit louder. So there's, now we got the reverb, that's where it gets interesting. Okay, now it actually sounds like it's coming from a record. And things like that make all the difference when you're trying to set the mood. Especially with a sample like that. It's all about the vibe. And like I said, in the beginning, joking around, if that doesn't make you want to rob somebody, but that's the vibe you're trying to create with the music.
And then we also have this electric piano here, which basically does the same thing, but a bar later. arpeggiated, but it's basically playing the same chord.
Keyscape.
It's Keyscape Rhodes LA Custom Vibra. It's just like a basic keyscape patch, and I guess there's some effects like reverb, same procedure, Valhalla delay, and the doubler, just to add some of that chorusy, like you see there's also chorusy, and the preset is called Horror Show.
That does this.
Exactly.
This is, pitch modulation that you hear. That's where that's coming from.
Yeah. And the last thing is, again, RVox, just to get it in the right position inside the mix.
So the next sound we added was this signature West Coast lead. And in order to do that, we used the UAD Mini Moog plugin. There's a lot of Mini Moog plugins out there, and they all have their own character and I'd say advantages and disadvantages. But for some reason, the Mini Moog version by UAD kind of sounds the dirtiest, or it comes the closest to an actual synth, in our opinion. And that's why we usually use that when it's time to add that type of sound.
So maybe we should get into how you can actually build this sound.
How to build a signature West Coast lead sound.
So first of all, with the Mini Moog, you have 3 oscillators. So 3 different like waves, sine wave, square, rectangle, whatever, that you can mix together. What you do in order to create this signature West Coast sound, you just turn off oscillator 2 and 3 and
set the wave
to, I don't even know what this is called, almost like a triangle. This is the range, which is basically in which octave is the synth playing, and I set it to 4, which is pretty high, I guess.
The tune is regular. The glide time is a little over 6 milliseconds.
Yeah. The glide, you just turn it on. I wouldn't go below 4 because you want to have that legato portamento thing going on. That's basically it for that part. You also have this overload function, which allows you to, I guess, distort the sound a bit. I turn that on and I mix some of that in there just to give it more of that gritty analog feel. And then you use the cutoff to roll off some of the highs. For this particular example, I used a very slow attack time. It kind of bends in when it comes in. I didn't want it to be like, I didn't want it to sound like this. Because in this sample, the role of that sound is to be more in the background and add some like ear candy. We also have like delay and reverb, which usually I wouldn't add a reverb to this sound. Most of the time I add some delay. And this is again Valhalla delay, Valhalla vintage verb. I guess at that point you get that we really love these plugins. And it's just playing this octave right here. Because the sound is just holding that octave for like 4 bars or 8 bars or something, we decided to render this sound and add like a little fade so that the sound gets lower and lower over time, but you still hear that high frequency and it fills out the space of the mix. So now it lowers. And up until
it stays there.
Yeah, it just gets quieter and quieter until you have more of like a texture that just adds high frequencies. Let's listen to the entire thing. Okay, so we also have this organ in here playing these very basic chords.
There's some movement going on.
Yeah, there's some movement going on, and that's Effectrix. This is like a little secret trick that I use a lot. I use the vinyl from Effectrix, and I add it in like a rhythmical way. So you have these like steps.
Sounds especially cool with the organ.
Yeah, because it adds that chop effect in a sense. And then we also have some like keyboard fills. This one, for example. This is the and this is like a Wurlitzer, basically parallel fourths all over. You see down here we have these very, very short D sharps. That's like a keyboarder trick when you play a clavinet or like a Wurlitzer or an organ. You just like snap one of the keys like that in order to give the instrument some more percussive feel, like this. A guitarist would do the same thing. He would basically hold down the strings, play, and then release the strings a bit so that he only gets the muted sound, and then do it like a... And you're kind of emulating the dead notes in between by just snapping the keys really, really short. And we also have another keyboard fill. This one sounds a little weird. I don't even know how we came up with this.
But again, it helps to emphasize the vibe of the whole thing. Like it sounds like shit going wrong, you know? like the whole thing is like, oh no, I'm getting robbed. They're chasing me. It just adds that vibe, you know?
Yeah. We also have this little clavinet layering the bass line. This is the Clavinet 5 from Arturia. Preset is called Cancer and Capricorn. And lastly, we have this guitar right here.
This guitar.
This is Grindhouse.
Oh, that's a cheat code.
Yeah, it's a contact library, and the guitar is called Superfly Mod Wheel guitar. And we use this one a lot, actually. So you use the mod wheel in order to open and close.
Like a wah-wah pedal, basically. But there's not a lot of, or there's not a lot of, you know, plugins that do that I like, or that sound authentic. But this one's kind of cool.
This one sounds very good, especially when you use it for like background chords and textures, like this. And if you layer an electric piano and you just layer it with this, it sounds really, really good.
I guess that's it as far as the sample goes. That's all the individual elements. And then, you know, once you got that, it really, there's not much left in order to take this from a sample to a beat. Usually what we do when we put together sample packs is we test drive the sample, if you will. That's what we did with this one. We actually did that with every single sample in this particular pack. We don't always do it with every joint, but on this particular pack, we literally made a beat with every single sample in the pack. So we added some drums and we kept it real 90s, real West Coast, real gangster, if you will. Added a drum break and just layered that drum break with individual kicks and snares, and just in order to fatten it up a little bit.
So should we just play the whole thing?
So let's play the whole joint with drums and everything. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown. If you're into those type of sounds, make sure you check out the pack. It's called Westside Story. You can find it on dopeboykids.com. If you like this particular beat and you're a rapper and you're like, you know, you're talking about the sample, where you're hiding those beats, make sure you check out dopeboysmusic.com. That's where you can find this beat and like 800 more joints. Again, I appreciate you guys checking it out. We'll do a lot more of these. Stay tuned and thanks for watching. Peace.